killer, so fuck yeah, I guess. Loser. Here is a case where Egypt and UNRWA planned to relocate Gaza's refugees to the Sinai in 53 to 55 and resulted in a popular resistance that was eventually led by Islamists/communists. Destiny, this is wrong because the Quran specifically name drops the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Wait, clear effect. Can you show that? Show me. Link me where in the Quran it clearly names those two things. This hadith refers to the Jewish temple. Note 46. Don't quote me in this, but it is my understanding that the Quran was written years after Muhammad died. Wait, am I... Listen, I don't know shit about fucking Islam is the religion. Like, I totally fully admit that, okay? Because fuck all the religion, all right? But I thought it was written like during or like very quickly as his life was progressing and after. No? I thought that's why people... Isn't that why Islam and people like shit on Christianity? Because they're like, look at your fake bullshit. Like, you guys wrote about Jesus like 100 years, 50 years after he died. Like, none of the original disciples even wrote about Jesus. That's why he's a loser. But Muhammad's stuff was written by people that like literally knew him in person and like was part of his shit and everything. Am I wrong on that? Apostate prophet.
Steven.
Hi.
What's up? Are you asking me right now?
Yeah, sure. Tell me. Hit me up.
It's a little bit different. So in Islam, the actual story or the actual narrative is that Muhammad revealed the verses that were delivered to him through the angel Gabriel by Allah. He recited them to his companions, to the people around him. They memorized those verses. Some of them wrote them down, and then after Muhammad died, there was a battle, a war, where lots of the people who memorized it and who wrote it down died. So his successors came up with the idea of compiling it all into one book as the Quran. So that wasn't something that Muhammad himself, instructed people to do, and it was then compiled after him.
But it was like people who knew him, right?
Yeah. But we also don't exactly have. So there is no confirmation that what we have now in content is identical to whatever he, revealed or recited, or what was first compiled.
Sure.
But yeah, that's
my understanding though is when people, especially Muslims, shit on Christians. Isn't a big issue. I should know this. It's been so long, okay? But like, wasn't a big issue with the Bible and the Gospels that none of the actual disciples had actually written any of the Gospels? That these were all like compilations of stories and letters and shit that were written down years and years later, or decades later.
I would have to. There is dispute on that. I talked with Bart Ehrman about this a while ago when I was interviewing him on Christianity and Islam, and so he agrees, for example, that the early Gospels contain a lot of truth because they were written by people who did witness at least Jesus or somebody else who witnessed Jesus. So that there is a lot of truth in it, but there might be also a myths in it. But yeah, so there is some scholarly dispute about when and how exactly they were written. So yeah,
okay,
there's a difference.
Let me go grab a Red Bull and then we can fight over some things. One sec.
Okay, let's fight.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. Oh, wait, also, where are you from? Or do you say it? You don't have to say if you don't want to, actually. Sorry, I don't know.
No, I live in America.
Okay.
Was born in Germany, Turkish origin, live in America.
Gotcha.
Everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just sitting there and looking at stuff, and my wife loves listening to your live streams. She's probably listening right now. And I overheard you were talking about Palestine and what the borders of it are and the history of it. And I sent you a small text there, but I wanted to explain, or if you have any, I don't know, if there are any misunderstandings or something that you might need to clarify.
Yeah, I guess the issue that I'm running into is it feels like part of the pro-Palestinian narrative is that there were a group of people living in a region of the planet that we call like Palestine, and that they have had a very strong national identity for over hundreds of years, or at least ethnic identity for over 100 years, easily. But then, like when I do like a reading of the history in this region, and then just like statements and things that are happening around it, it feels like they all just kind of consider themselves like all kind of Arabs in the region. That they didn't have like super strong feelings on like, oh, we are Palestinians. That's like the feeling I get. But then obviously when you talk to people today, they're like, oh no, like back in the year 1900, there was like Palestine was written on this map, and they definitely consider themselves like a coherent group of people, and blah blah blah. And it's just hard. It's been hard for me to ascertain if that's true or not. It doesn't seem to be the case. Yeah.
Well, I can break it down quickly, but there is truth to one thing that you're saying, which is that so the people in the region were simply known as Arabs, or they were known by their tribes or by their religious beliefs and all of that. It was only in the in the last century, in the 20th century, in the middle of the 20th century, toward the end of the 20th century, this whole identity as Palestinians, a national identity, it was advocated for by certain groups that emerged as Palestinian nationalists.
But with that, when you say emerged as Palestinian nationalists, this was in like, my understanding is this was in like the 1960s, maybe like 50s, 60s, and 70s. But prior to that, I have a hard time like seeing evidence for that.
Well, there was, to be fair, there was. I am very much pro-Israel as much as it gets, but but to be fair, there was an early movement during the 1930s, at the end of the 1930s, that emerged as a Palestinian nationalist movement, and there was after the war, after the 1948 war, there was an attempt at building a government in what was Egypt-occupied Gaza. You know, there was no Palestine; it was part of Egypt, and there they established. A small government, a subject government called the All-Palestine
government, yeah. So for this part, like I'm familiar with the 36-39 revolts. I don't know if that was a strong Palestinian national identity or if that was just like all the Arabs in the region were like, bro, you guys are shipping in way too many European Jews. Get these guys the out of here. That was my impression from 36 to 39. And then I'm aware of that All-Palestine government now that was formed in the Gaza Strip. But it seems like, because I think Egypt had created and then like completely dissolved that government within like 5 years.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
There was a lot of dispute about what should happen with those Arabs in that region. So one important thing that needs to be said is, I think an important issue is, so at the beginning of the 20th century, the region was controlled by the Ottomans. They didn't refer to it as Palestine at all. They didn't refer to the people there as Palestinians at all. The people were just subjects. They were known as Arabs, Christians, Muslims, Missouri tribes, whatever you call it. When the British took it over, they referred to it as Palestine because that's how it was known in Western language, because the Romans named it that long time ago.
Sure.
They named it Syria Palestina.
They named it, after they kicked the Jews out because they fucking hated them or something, yeah.
Yeah, that's the major theory, although there is some dispute about it.
What is the dispute on that? I'm curious, tell me.
Well, so the major scholarly agreement on that is that it was indeed a political move. So after they suppressed the Jewish revolt in 130 something, they wanted to disconnect the Jewish identity from the region.
Yeah. Also, that Jewish revolt, those are huge numbers, given how 130 AD that it was some like 200 to 400,000 Jewish people were killed / enslaved, which seems like huge numbers for 2,000 years ago.
And then that was a huge one.
Not only did they rename the region like Syria Palestine, apparently afterwards they built like this fucking like the Temple of Jupiter or some shit on the Temple Mount or whatever as well.
Yeah, they had big problems with the Jewish identity. The Romans, they wanted people to assimilate and to be part of their ways, participate in their activities, and the Jewish people, they just wouldn't have it. They were They were proud of their identity. They wanted to preserve it. And after that revolt, the Romans they had enough, and they thought, no, we're getting rid of this. They tried to suppress the identity as much as possible, named it Syria Palestina, tried to get rid of all kinds of Jewish elements and symbols, tried to impose pagan rituals and things like that. But still, it didn't help. The Jewish population remained, by the way. They weren't... unlike what some people think, they weren't entirely removed. Lots of them remained there, and held on to the land, although others were expelled or fled. But there has always been a Jewish population in that region. But the point is, so in the 20th century, when the British take over, they call it Palestine, and some movements emerge when they see that the British want to establish a Jewish land there. And remember, what the British planned initially was to make it all a Jewish homeland, a Jewish country. They didn't mean to divide what you see today.
Well, wait. Can you say that again? What do you mean when you say that? Because it feels to me like prior to the Balfour Declaration,